Hey everybody, and welcome to Outdoor Adventures. I'm Frozen if you don't know me already, and this year I hiked the Pacific Crest Trail. Not only did I thru hike the PCT, but I also vlogged my thru hike, which, if you're just thru hiking, that's one thing, but if you're trying to do both on a long trail like the PCT, that's something special, and it requires a lot of special considerations and gear choices that most won't usually bring on a standard thru hike or even a standard backpacking trip. And that's what this video is going to be about today. My experiences with the electronics that I used on the PCT, and then later in the video we'll get into more of the vlogging and software requirements. So say you want to vlog your upcoming thru hike, you're probably going to want to watch this video. So let's just dive right into it. I think the most important piece of gear, for the PCT at least, is going to be some kind of communication device or PLB. I chose the Garmin InReach Mini 2, and though we had a bumpy start with customer service, my wife couldn't text me. She was the only one who couldn't text this device. Customer service did end up figuring it out after about 4 weeks, a week before I left for the trail. And this thing was a lifesaver. Not only to, have that SOS button that you can hit in an emergency situation, but to look up the weather data, to be able to talk to loved ones back home whenever, most of the time, honestly guys, you're not gonna have a cell signal out there. I had Verizon while I was out there, which was pretty good up to Northern California, but it was pretty much non-existent in Oregon and Washington. While we're on that topic, I did hear basically Verizon is better for the southern half of the trail, while AT&T is better for the northern half. So if you want to have constant communication, maybe think about switching between them or have a multi SIM card or something. But anyway, yeah, the InReach Mini 2, couple gripes about it up front. This thing is USB-C chargeable, but I swear that they made this like the slowest possible charge that they could do. This thing takes sometimes an hour and a half to charge, and it's just really crazy how USB-C goes up to like, 30 watts very easily, but they couldn't figure out how to make the battery charge a little faster. On top of that, I really wish they would switch the OK button with the up and down arrows on this side. It's counterintuitive the way they designed the device, but I will say the device did handle great. There were rare times where it was really cloudy or foggy that this thing couldn't communicate with the satellites, but I was pretty surprised and impressed at the stability and the communication features in this thing. Especially dealing with fires in Northern California and Oregon and Washington, this was a lifesaver. Sometimes, I remember there was an instance where we weren't sure if we should continue or stay at this one campsite. My wife had texted me around 8 or 9 o'clock, and she's like, the fire is headed right for you, you guys need to move. And that wouldn't have been possible to know without one of these devices. We potentially might have woken up to a dangerous situation as far as smoke inhalation. So if you're gonna hike the PCT, I can't stress this enough. Unless you're traveling with someone with one of these, I highly, highly would suggest that you just bite the bullet and get one of these devices. All right, let's talk headphones. I didn't use these a lot. Most of the time these were for editing, but I did listen to, I think I got The Witcher while I was out there and listened to the audiobooks out here. These are nice, the non-wired ones, because you can pair these Bluetooth, put one in your ear, and then have your other ear for listening to surroundings. You definitely want to hear those rattlesnakes out there, and just having two headphones in is just a stupid idea. And I saw a ton of people with two headphones in. I remember I stopped one person that couldn't even hear me yell at them because they were coming up on a rattlesnake that I had waited for the next person behind me. Just completely oblivious, would have possibly gotten bitten and had to get flown out of there. But do yourself a favor. If you want to listen to both headphones, there's transparency modes, in which case it activates the microphones around you and you can hear your surroundings. But don't have these at full blast and listening to your AC/DC, your Guns N' Roses, whatever you're listening to. Make sure you're aware of your surroundings, man. Sometimes I would come up, people you know, I'd be up behind someone. I was like, excuse me, can I pass? And they were oblivious to I was there. It's just really stupid and really dangerous. You want to leave yourself open to your surroundings. I'm not going to harp on it, but just my recommendations. All right, one of the pieces of electronics that I was pleasantly surprised about was the Nitecore NU25 Generation 2 model. Now, this headlamp was plenty bright for the early Sierra mornings that we had to wake up for. It did really great in the cold. It did great in the rain, the times that we needed it. And what I'm more surprised about was the fact that I accidentally submerged this with the battery cover exposed. And, you know, I kept it in my pocket overnight because it wouldn't turn on. And the following morning, I was very happy to see that it had kind of fixed itself. And got the water out of the charging port. I thought I had blew this up somewhere in the deep Sierra, and there was no way for me to replace this for several hundred miles. I did like the NU25 Gen 1 better than this, but I did think that this was a little brighter, had a little bit better battery. It's also USB-C rechargeable. All my stuff this trip was USB-C, and it was great. It really was. I can't harp on it too much, but Nitecore, bring back the old Gen 1. That was great. For wall charging, I went with a gallium nitride. It's a fancy way of saying a little heavier, but accepts more power in a smaller package. This is an Anker. I want to say it's a 67 watt outlet charger, and it had USB-A and 2 USB-C ports. Now, I saw a lot of selfish people out there, man, and I'm going to be completely honest. If you're on a thru hike, wall outlets are an extreme commodity out there. They're a luxury, and you're not always guaranteed to find one out there, especially in these resort places where all the hikers are eating and charging up their electronics at once. So be considerate and have something with multiple ports to charge not only your battery banks, to maybe consolidate some of the people that bring those stupid, those Apple chargers or those Anker Nanos that just have that one USB-C port and they take up, you know, a double outlet. It's ridiculous. This is so small, guys, compared to, let's see, compared to the Garmin, right? It's very, very small in its size. It weighs a decent bit, but it produces 67 watts and you can use 3 ports on this. I found this great, had a retractable plug. Make sure you do get one with a retractable plug. You don't want this popping through your clothes bag or your backpack or, you know, anything else taking up space. So this was perfect. I brought 2 cables. I ended up losing one of them. I brought a 6-foot cable and a 3-foot cable. The 6-foot cable was for my phone, while the 3-foot cable was for my battery banks. And I thought that worked very, very well. I also had another cable, which we'll get into in a second, that was a USB 3.2 data transfer cable. Now, the last one I want to talk about before we get into the vlogging stuff is something that I was super surprised about. And that was my FlexTail Zero Pump. Honestly, guys, I wanted to hate this thing. You know, it's not one of those items that are really required to blow up your sleeping pad, but this thing was a beast. I'll be honest. I absolutely did not want to take the time to use my lungs, especially in the Sierra, to blow up my sleeping pad. I didn't want to get a pump sack or anything because honestly, one of these are about as light as a pump sack anyway. You know, the fact that the battery comes out and the battery has a USB-C port to charge it up, it was great. It really was. This was one of my favorite pieces of gear on the trail, and it was quite surprising to me. Just the sheer size of this thing, the nozzle adapter for my Nemo Tensor. I could just plug this in, walk away. I didn't have to hold it or anything. I can't believe it. It's still charged from the PCT hike. But when it sounded like that, I knew the pump had completely inflated the pad. And, you know, that allowed me to do other things like, you know, start boiling water or set up my my pillow or add an extra tent stake or whatever I was doing without having to blow up my sleeping pad. I really like this, guys. I was very surprised that this made it to one of my favorite pieces of gear. And I think I will be bringing this along any other trip that requires me to have a sleeping pad. So FlexTail did a good job with this one. I'm surprised. Hopefully you can make this a little smaller. Now, I did get Another sleeping pad pump that we'll be trying out next year, it's called the Pad Pal, and it's instead of ounces, it's grams, guys. It's really, really light. It's not as powerful as this guy, but we're definitely going to put it through its paces. So the Pad Pal, we'll see how that goes. All right, let's get into the vlogging side of things. So first off, I filmed this entire hike on my Pixel 8 Pro phone. I thought the cameras in this thing and the audio that this produced with the stereo microphones was excellent. A quick tip for anybody that likes to use glass screen and camera protectors, make sure, I'm going to show you this, make sure you get the right screen protector for your microphones. If you can see right up here, there's a little cutout for a microphone and an autofocus laser. Whenever I had the camera protector without those little cutouts, the audio was muffled. So be aware of where your microphones are and make sure you select the right pieces of glass for your phone. Now, what I would do is I would charge this up every night, and throughout the day as I'm using my software like Far Out and filming, which I filmed in 4K 30 frames per second, it used a lot of battery. So by the time I got to camp and I was finished with editing for the night, sometimes I was sitting between 40 and 60% battery every single day. So I needed a lot of power while I was out there, which we'll get to in a second. I usually attached my phone for any kind of tripod setup shots with this Ulanzi tripod. And what's cool about this is it has a rotatable like ball head on it. That you can, obviously rotate it, but it also acts as an actual tripod or selfie stick. And I used both of those features a lot while I was on the hike, especially the tripod setup, which I found, you don't always just want to be holding the phone up to you. It's really of a boring shot. You want to kind of mix it up, get some walking away shots if that's your thing. That's my thing. And I thought this held up great. It's also a Ulanzi mount. It's a little squeaky now, as you can hear, but no issues whatsoever with this thing, except this little sharp piece that's supposed to be a cold shoe for a microphone ended up digging into my pack material and causing some abrasion, which I then had to patch up, but no big deal. It's pretty easy. Let's get on to my power banks. This is ridiculous, guys. 17 ounces, not for both, but for each individual one, over a pound each on these battery banks. And this is what I started with. These are the PowerCore 537 24,000 milliamps. I almost had 50,000 milliamps of battery power when I started the trail. And I hated carrying these things, but they did a darn good job of charging my phone up. When you're looking at power banks to film and vlog a thru hike, you're looking at a couple things. You're looking at, number one, charging speed. These things take a lot of time to charge, about 4.5 hours each. Or if you plug it into something like this that produces 67 watts, gallium nitride chargers, you can charge them both at the same time with the USB-C ports. 24,000 milliamps each on these batteries, so about 50,000 milliamps. That's a lot, but it's not as much as you think. Due to heat dissipation and the voltage conversion going to your phone, I was only able to get 3 full charges from my phone per battery bank. However, like I said, I was between 40 and 60% battery life on my phone, so each battery bank would last 6 days total, plus 2 days the charge coming out of a town. So keep that in mind. So after I got through the Sierra, I actually sent this one back home. I kept the black one and I downsized from a 24,000 to a 10,000 Anchor Nano, which has a built-in USB-C port or charging cable, which I didn't really like. I thought this was stupid. Don't put this on here. They have one without it, but it's not 30 watts output and input. But it also has a USB-C and a USB-A port. And between these two, I think this is what you want to record in 4K and potentially upload on the trail. Now, I think if I had to do it again, I would not start with the second big power bank. I thought this would suffice. 2 days out of this, so 1 full charge out of that from my phone, maybe like 2.5 on here. 6 charges here and then 2 charges here. So, it was plenty enough for 7 days of hiking without having to worry if my phone was going to die. A little iffy in the Sierra due to the cold weather. Cold weather does affect battery life, but I thought these devices were perfectly fine. I got in case I wanted to charge my headlamp at the same time as I'm charging my 2 power banks, I got this little USB-A right here. You can see it. See if you can see it right there. Yep, USB-A to C converter. So I would just plug in my existing USB-C cable, and now it could go in the A port of the charger. So I can charge all 3 at once. Now that would limit the voltage or the wattage output for the top USB-C ports, but not by much. It was something like 8 watts, so it takes 6 hours to charge instead of 4.5. Probably giving you more info than you need, but these are the things that you really need to consider before you get out there on a thru hike. Last but not least, I brought a little hard drive with me. This is a 4 terabyte Samsung T7 Shield. It's waterproof, dustproof, shockproof, so you can drop this thing. I wouldn't recommend it. This thing had sand in the USB port. This thing got dirty in the mud. I mean, this thing has been through hell and it still is going strong. It's working great. And it's super fast. USB 3.2 is very, very fast. I carried a large 3.2 cable, a real small size, but very thick, which I can't seem to find right now. So it's probably upstairs. But I stored all the raw, unedited footage on this thing. And I only used about 1.5 terabytes of data throughout the whole trip, having probably 15 to 18 minutes of video footage every day. It was still plenty of space for this thing. And the reason why I brought this was on the AT, I never had the original footage. All I had was the vlogging that I did after I fully edited, rendered it, added music. And it was really a pain in the butt to make my documentary, A Journey of the Soul. If you haven't checked that out, I'll link it up above on the right side. But now I have the raw footage, and in case I ever want to do a documentary for the PCT, which I'm thinking about, that might be the next big project. I have that raw footage, I have the rendered footage, and I was able to, keep the pictures off of my phone and save to a backup just in case I lost that. You'll never get these memories back, and I highly suggest you have a backup device that you're putting stuff on. Now going back to my phone, this is a 256 gig model. I never felt like I needed more space in the 512, but I also feel like if I would have got the 128 gig, it just wouldn't have been big enough. I could fit about 2 weeks worth of data on here before I transferred it over to my hard drive when I was in town. I thought this worked great. This ran several apps, which I may as well go through that now. One was Far Out. That's basically a must-have if you're going to be through hiking the trail. It tells you where the water is, tells you where the campsites are. People can comment on each point of interest, letting you know additional things like how they got around the fire closure. And that was really, really required for me to hike this trail, to be honest with you. Sure, you could do it without a phone completely, but why? You know what I mean? I also had this app called Watch Duty, which the PCT unfortunately doesn't communicate fire closures very well. Yeah, they might throw it up on their website. Sometimes it's a couple days late, and they don't really tell you how to get around it. But with Watch Duty, you really can see how big the fire is and the latest news on the fire, comments on the fire, and if there's any reroutes that you can take. I had that along with I think it was Gaia GPS, which also listed several trails that were not in Far Out. That helped me navigate some of these fire closures and get around them safely. And I do recommend that you get both Watch Duty, Gaia, and Far Out for your thru hike. It's almost needed at this point. If the PCTA was a little better at communicating, you could just use their app. But honestly, guys, it was like banging my head against a wall waiting for updates for these fires. You're in the middle of 3 fires, and the PCTA isn't really offering any guidance on, what do you do? If, they say don't go past this spot, but if you're already past the spot, what do? You got to think about that before you leave for your thru hike. The video editor that I used the entire trail was an app called KindMaster. It is a paid subscription. They do have a free model, but then you got that stupid watermark at the top right. And it's pretty cheap. I think it was like 12 or 13 bucks a month. And I thought it did a really good job at handling every single thing that I needed to edit while I was out there. For you vloggers out there, when you go to export your footage, make sure you turn that bit rate up to the max you possibly can. That'll make your footage look better when YouTube compresses the footage once you upload it. So, I know that was kind of quick, but a lot of information. Hopefully that helps some of you vloggers out there and some of you determine, what kind of electronics you're gonna need out there. Going back to the power banks before we wrap this video up, I honestly think if I wasn't vlogging my trip, this 10,000 milliamp charger would have been fine. Ideally, I probably would have brought a 20,000 out there and then called it a day, but they didn't really have a good model other than Nightcore, which I heard a lot of complaints before I left for the trail. Everybody that had it while they were on the trail said it was great, no problems whatsoever. Maybe they were just a bad batch of early models that they released to the influencers out there, who knows. But definitely something around the 10 to 15,000 milliamp range should do you fine. You don't need to carry what I carried unless you're vlogging. So thanks everybody for watching. If you have any questions about anything, let me know down in the comments section below, and I'll see you on the trail, everybody.